Hey, good morning, sophomores. I hope you guys are all doing well. So today, in this video, I'm going to talk about Edgar Allan Poe, give you a little bit of background about him, because you guys are about to read The Fall of the House of Usher, which is one of his best short stories. He's a man that wrote short stories, known for short stories and poetry. You've probably read some about Edgar Allan Poe already, maybe even if you didn't know it. So let me get ready here to share my screen and we will get into it because he's a very interesting man. Um, and okay, so when we talk about Edgar Allan Poe, here's the deal. Um, why are we talking about the author? Well, the reason we're talking about the author is because it's always important to look at the author's background to help understand what it is that we're reading. And as far as especially when we're talking about culture, which is our theme, if you can understand what the culture is of the author, you can see how it impacts their writing. All right. So we're going to be reading The Fall of the House of Usher. So obviously I included Usher, the artist, as a joke. Um, Down here, this is one of many artists' depictions of what the fall of the House of Usher looks like. This will make more sense when you read. But as you can see from looking at this, it looks kind of eerie. Looks a little bit like a haunted house in many ways. It almost looks like your run-of-the-mill haunted house, what you'd expect to see if you were coming upon a haunted house. So that should give you kind of a clue as to the mood or the setting of what we're going to be looking at. We're talking about a very, it's just a kind of a dark, haunting kind of story. So let's start with talking about Edgar Allan Poe's background. So Edgar Allan Poe was born into a low-class family of actors in Boston. That's not a Boston accent. Boston. His father abandoned the family when Edgar Allan Poe was 1, and his mother died the year after. One moment, students. I thought you left it on the chair. So Edgar Allan Poe had quarrels with his adoptive father over money and gambling debts. So let's get this straight. So his biological father abandoned the family, then he was adopted because his mother died the year after. His adopted father basically had quarrels with Poe because he was telling Edgar that he was irresponsible with his money, largely due to gambling. Edgar Allan Poe enlisted in the military under a fake name, but left West Point after deciding to be a writer. So, in an effort to make his father proud and to get his adoptive father off his back, he went to West Point to be a military man, but he did it under a fake name and then decided to leave to become a writer. So, probably his most well-known work is The Raven, which is a poem, and he started writing that, and it met instant success, which is interesting because pretty much all the other stuff that he wrote became popular posthumously. Posthumously means after he died. So the short story we're about to read, The Fall of the House of Usher, it's a great story. People like literary experts across the world like proclaim this as a great work of literature, but it wasn't popular when he first wrote it and published it. Only The Raven was one that was. So then when Poe was 27, and here's where stuff gets weird, he married his 13-year-old cousin. Interesting, right? That all I can say is that it was a different time. This is in the 1800s. This is out east. Who knows what's going on out east? But either way, he married his 13-year-old cousin when he was almost 30, and she died 11 years later. Poe planned to publish his works in a journal, but he died before that came to fruition. So why do I tell you about this? Why do I tell you about his parents dying when he was 1, about having a hard relationship with his adopted father, about the writing being a struggle for him, about marrying his own cousin who is very young, and she died like pretty young also. Why is this all important? Well, this is important because this kind of sets the mood and helps you understand who Edgar Allan Poe is and what his personality might have been or what his frame of mind. He was known as the what's it called? He was known as the father of the macabre. Okay, macabre is macabre. It's a French word, I believe. And macabre is basically an old-fashioned term for horror. Without Edgar Allan Poe, the horror that we read or that we watch today would never have come. So the Fall of the House of Usher, when I said it looks like a haunted house, this is really one of the first haunted house stories that ever really existed. So that is pretty cool when you think about it in that way. To you, it may not seem anything special because we've been exposed to a lot of haunted house stuff since then. But this is the first haunted house story that really was written and became popular. So the other detail about him that is interesting is that his death is mysterious. Many people claim that they saw Edgar Allan Poe bumbling around the city one day and that he was speaking nonsense. He was wearing clothes that were not his, and later his body was found in a ditch. Many speculate that his death was tied to alcoholism, depression, or suicide, possibly a disease, and most likely a gambling debt was involved as well. So we already talked about how gambling and money was an issue for him. So again, kind of a sad end to a great literary mind. But he's just what it is he's just kind of a messed up dude. He's got a lot of really difficult things that went on in his life. A mixture of unfortunate things and also probably a mixture of bad decisions that he made. And when you combine all that together, he ended up with a very just a very sad life, and it led to a lot of his emotions and feelings being expressed in his writing. And that's why his writing is based on horror, and there's a lot of death in his writings, and you can tell he's kind of exploring these feelings he was going through. So I share all that with you just so that you can have kind of a background idea of where he's coming from, why this story is as creepy and as messed up as it is. And that is part of culture. His culture changed who he was and eventually led to his death. And so now as you read The Fall of the House of Usher, consider the culture of the main character. The narrator, he's not given a name. Consider the culture of Roderick Usher, who's the owner of The Fall of the House of Usher, and how his culture changed, and the culture of his sister, Roderick Usher's sister, and how the culture around her changed who she was. So look at those things as you read. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it. You guys will have until next Monday to have the entire thing read and questions answered. It is a longer one, and it's a little more old-timey in words and sounds. So it might take you a little more time than the other ones we've read so far, but you guys will like it, and it's just a very interesting story. So you have today, and let's see, today is Tuesday. You have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Monday to get it done. It's more than enough time to get the reading and the questions done. I don't want to hear any excuses that you couldn't get it done on time because I'm giving you plenty of time to do it. All right? So please go ahead and get to work and enjoy The Fall of the House of Usher.